We will have to do that, sorry.
It's 10:31 and Gary, everybody's here, so let's get going.
Yeah, so commissioners, this is an emergency policy session you scheduled yesterday to continue your conversations on the Children's Safety Services Levy, putting that on the ballot. Today you need to finalize your language for the ballot title and explanatory statement. County Counsel Stephen Madcore has worked furiously all night, all day. He has a draft in front of you earlier this morning. So Stephen, I'll turn it over to you for presentation.
Thank you, Gary. Commissioners, this morning I circulated to you the latest versions. You should have in front of you the ballot title and the explanatory statement. On the footer of both, it should have August 5th as the date. That is the document we will be working from this morning. In the email that I circulated, I explained that we removed any reference to childcare, to workforce, and to after-school programs. That was agreed to yesterday. I also added language stating that there's a preference for nonprofits, but it is not to the exclusion of all others. And I removed the annual grant funding requirement so that we could have multi-year contracts with service providers. I stated that the caption and the question and the summary are as succinct as possible. They're at 174 words for the summary. 175 is the max. I spoke with one of the commissioners this morning. It was Commissioner Fisher. She asked me if we could, on the second paragraph of the summary, where it says program to be administered and staffed by Clackamas County, if we could strike and staff, and I have no problem with that. And it gives you 2 extra words to work with if you wanted to. And so I have no problem with that. And also in the email, I pointed out the concern. It's not legal, it's administrative, but it bears repeating and revisiting with the board just so they know. This is going to be a whole new line of, funding and collections for the county. And I just point out that the number that we have, 7%, which is still going to be about 450,000, depending upon the actual amounts collected. You want to pay attention to that, as it might not be enough, because you're going to have county hands all over this from start to finish, from collection to distribution to having the county auditor involved, the treasurer. So that's a number you want to take a look at. And I understand that it has voter appeal, that you say the county's only going to get so much out of it, but we are in a financial situation here at the county, and we're not in a position, I know, I've heard about it, as Gary has preached to us, that we're not sustainable with this current budget. So you need to be, for future generations and future boards, you need to be mindful of this. It's only for 5 years, but I anticipate it would be renewed, like levies have a tendency to do. So that's something worthy of conversation. 7% is what we have now. You could strike it in its entirety. Commissioner Savas mentioned, what about if we include qualifiers such as endeavor? And yes, you could do that, or you could say strive or intent or objective. But if we exceed it, I anticipate that an attentive citizen would point that out to you and say that you said 7% and now it's 11.5. What gives? You defrauded the voters. So that's a concern that we have. If the board is prepared to have it consume county resources regardless of the percentage, then certainly you could put the 7%, you could put 5%, you could put eliminate it in its entirety. So I just want to point that out. Explanatory statement has 105 words available to you. You could add more to it. I'm not entirely sure if your folks are going to read it, if the citizens, voters are going to read it in its entirety. I think it's pretty good right now. It identifies all of the programs that the proponents included in their initial, in their documents. I mean, it's a culmination of them all. It says the board has final grant authority, awarding authority. There'll be one member of the commission is appointed to this Children's Services Committee. It will be a cross-section of the county itself. They will be advisory to the board. So it clearly sets forth the governance structure, and it also sets forth the review process and the follow-up metrics as well. So if there's going to be any additions, I would recommend that they be to the explanatory statement, and only minor ones to the ballot measure itself. As I also pointed out in the email, commissioners, we will get this to the Mary Rathke today for posting, and it's still in draft form. It won't be final until it's before you next Thursday. So if there was some, I call them tweaks, if there were some last minute adjustments between now and Thursday, the opportunity exists, and you will have a broader, more robust discussion potentially next Thursday when you have this as a public discussion item and a referral to the voters itself. But it needs to be finalized on Thursday because it has to go to Sherry Hall on Friday. And I'm here to answer any questions that the board may have.
So you said next Thursday, not this Thursday.
It's being, no, it's not tomorrow. It's being
Okay.
sent to you for next, for
Okay.
next.
Thursday week.
Just wanted to clarify that. Paul? Mike?
Sorry about that. Something that we never got a clear answer from that was kind of alluded to already by Mr. Madcore, and that is the administrative costs. Gary, yesterday we asked you, you guessed that a range of 7 to 8. I think Mr. Madcore raises a valid point. I'm looking for some guidance from you if you have a better idea today, if that 7% is insufficient. If the 7% is insufficient, then I think maybe we're better off striking the language. I don't know. I'd like to hear what my colleagues have to say about that. I have other comments, but maybe, Gary, if you could just respond to that one, please.
Yes, I'm sorry I don't have a definitive answer for you. I just can't get this done in less than 24 hours. So 7% is the minimum to sustain this program. Some of the decisions you're about to make will guide that. For example, if the grant is only a year, or if it's over the life of the levy, that will impact the workload of our staff. How large the community advisory group you choose to put together. There's a lot of pieces that you haven't decided yet, but I would offer 7% as the minimum to at least break even on the amount of work this will impact our staff. It's likely higher, but I'm mindful if the amount's too high, the voters may be deterred from doing this. They want to be respectful of that.
Okay, so then it would seem then if what I saw from staff, that if the grants were done annually, that would add an administrative burden. And it seems to me that the year in which the grants would be issued would be a very high year, and then maybe the other years would be a much lower administrative cost. So I don't know. I don't want to complicate it, and I would say that maybe the average over the 5-year life of the levy, administrative costs will be held too, but that's just a lot of verbiage, and I don't think it's the intent for ourselves or the coalition that they wish to have the county taxpayers subsidize this beyond from the general fund to this. So I think there's a good faith effort to make sure that we're whole. And that we're mindful of keeping the cost down. So I'd like to, I think that's one thing we need to discuss. The other one I want to point out, Stephen, I really liked your language, and excuse me 1 second while I pull this up. I liked the language as it refers to the committee, this advisory committee. It looks good in the ballot title, but it's different in the explanatory statement. And my comments yesterday, let me pull it up here exactly. My comments yesterday that it be a separate group of people that are independent, and that's just really about process and not posing any conflicts of interest, that the membership, should really kind of be really outside of this group. And the language in the second to last paragraph says, again, in the explanatory statement, where is it here? The committee will be advisory and will be comprised of members representing a cross section of Clackamas County and members that work with Clackamas youths. So I just want to make it clear that it's, you know, just in the interest of having transparency and you know, balance in that and not posing any conflicts of interest, that the language is clear enough that it's not members that are providing the services or grant awardees that are providing or sitting on this board.
You could certainly strike that, Commissioner. I understand your concern.
Okay, yeah, so that was one. And the only other thing I have, I'm just gonna put everything on the table now, is the part about the financials or that the reporting. I just want to know if it needs to be more explicit that, you know, it'll be subject to audits and financials. You know, those two words are not in there, and I forgot where you put that at.
It's at the bottom of the explanatory statement, Commissioner, on the first page, and will be subject to performance or financial audits. You're talking about the summary. You want it there too?
Well, I don't know if it has to be, but
It does not have to be, but we have a couple extra words. You could put comma and audits.
okay, please. I'd ask for that. I asked my colleagues to consider that.
So next is Martha and then Ken. Then Tanya.
I would really like to revisit before we go forward with this, the child care piece, the workforce piece, and after school programs and care, because I will send you the links when I did quite a bit of reading last night. And essentially what we're calling this is a children's safety levy. So it's a broad umbrella. And when I look up trauma-informed care, basically, that includes childcare, and there is ample literature to show that the work that people do in those milieus is trauma-informed and actually is preventative. My concern is that we're talking more about intervention and treatment as opposed to prevention. And these are the nonprofits or the groups that actually can stop any serious harm, or as much as they can, because we all know, and the literature shows this, that basically it's a from 0 to 3, you know, if you get those children sooner and earlier, and child care services that are trauma informed. And as I said, I'd be glad to send you all the links. The literature is quite clear that that is really a part of this continuum of safety. And the other piece of this is, I know that I did see a letter from Melissa Erblom, and they wanted to make sure that youth was included from, 0 to, I think, what was the age? Past 18, 22, 23, I don't recall. So if you're talking about broadening that age group, and we are hearing from our education folks, our school boards, our superintendents, that after school programs also fit into that metric. I'm not quite sure why we're not also including that language into the document. Because if you're going to increase the age range of who you're going to serve, quite frankly, and we're being told that that after school piece, particularly with kids in junior high school, is a key area of when they get into trouble, when they can tell you something bad's been happening to them, when you can actually help inform and even intervene earlier to even funnel kids to the right spot, to me is a critical component of this. I've got a phone call coming through. So I'm going to make a motion right now to include that language back into the children's levy explanatory statement. And the reason I'm doing this is it's our job as commissioners, quite frankly, to have a broader view of what child safety is. And to leave these critical components out, to me, isn't really working the prevention side. It simply seems to be more working towards the after the trauma has occurred side. And I think it's our duty and our mission as a commission, as we move forward with this, to do both. So I'm going to make that motion, and if I get a second, great. If I don't, I will have to tell people that it's not included in this levy. It's fine, but so.
Well, Martha, I'm not going to second it, but I just want to say something. I don't think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, if there's a nonprofit that provides after-school programs, there's nothing in this measure that says they can't. So let's say there's trauma, kids who have had trauma, or their ACEs test is bad, and there's a group that provides after-school services, or the nursery in Gladstone. There's nothing in this measure that prevents that from occurring, is there?
Well, my concern was after what I saw this morning from Melissa and given to Paul and given to Commissioner Fisher, they specifically asked for childcare to be removed, and the language that was put in was absolutely, it doesn't help. It doesn't really explain what we really need to be doing. The language just doesn't make sense to me. And I don't, because I don't have the right electronics in front of me to pull that up, but I'm hope maybe Paul, you could address that for me.
Well, let's get, Stephen has something he wants to say first, then we'll go to, we got an order, so let's go to Stephen first.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Schrader, the language was provision of trauma-informed activities during service provision for safe caregivers. I would not recommend including that because I don't know what it means. Maybe you could include something along the lines of a catch-all term such as associated services and programs, and leave yourself and the committee with some wiggle room necessary to incorporate alternative services under that catch-all provision, associated services and programs.
So what, man, let me finish something first though, Martha. One of the things I was very interested about childcare on the campus was not only for employees, but when people are over at the center getting services, that there's a place they could drop off their kids while they're getting those services. So I think that's what Stephen's saying. If you are getting services, counseling, marriage counseling, child stuff, and there's an opportunity that somebody provides to provide trauma services to children, you could still do that. That's not necessarily childcare. It's more of it's a service provision that follows along with the trauma, the work. Go ahead, Martha. Sorry.
What I'm trying to tell you is the literature I have read has been very clear, and I'll send you the links, that early childhood education programs, as well as those middle school areas, actually are preventative of trauma, and there's a body of literature for both. So if I don't have a second, I get that. But I'm going to point this out for the public that we need to be, it's our job to be frankly all-inclusive because this is a safety levy. And if we can get around that, Mr. Madcore, because of legislative intent, because of the comments I'm making here, because I'm not hearing a second from anyone, right?
Well, I just want to just say, I was waiting for you to make the motion. I don't think you actually made the motion.
Yeah.
Oh, I did, yeah.
Okay, then I'll second it for sake of discussion, just to make that
Okay.
clear.
I'm not clear on the specifics of the motion, so would we put some specific language out there? that you are asking for?
Find what I will ask for here. I'd like to include services, including after-school programs, parenting programs, and relief services, and childcare. And I'm trying to figure out where that would fit in the language. Steve, could you help?
Well, I would say you have, under the explanatory statement, Commissioner, you have parenting support, education, and skill building already. You also have strengthening economic supports for families. Both of those are pretty broad and could be construed to include those types of services. And I have no doubt that the literature supports
Right.
child care, but I would caution that I know that Multnomah County is going out for a universal preschool for all measure right now. And I think this child safety levy, if it includes words like childcare, it certainly could suggest that it is independent of the violence, neglect, and abuse component, which is the overarching criteria for this one. You understand what I'm saying? It's not a child care for all issue. It is child care and associated service to those who qualify as abused, neglected, or violated.
And what my concern is with the levy as a whole and us doing it so quickly. Because yes, what this is dealing with children after they've been traumatized. And it's going to limit us to do the prevention work we need, or limit, here's my worry, it's going to limit the dollars we have auspice over to actually really do the prevention, which in the long run will cost us less money. That's my worry. So if it doesn't fit, I think that needs to be clear and on the record that this is really solely going to be working with children after they're traumatized then, rather than really also focusing on those programs, given the literature of trauma and the literature of early childhood education, the literature of what we deal with kids who need that space time, and the notion that we're going to, and if we increase the definition of youth. I mean, if we're working with 23 and 24-year-olds, which was one of the suggestions I kind of read in a letter, why would we kind of go that far, but not also specifically make sure that we're working with those junior high kids? I don't understand this.
Two things, Commissioner, just sorry. We have in there in the explanatory statement, violence prevention programming to reduce the incidence of violence in the community. That's some pretty broad language there, and that speaks to prevention programming, which arguably could include some of the services that you're talking about. And secondly, I did not modify any of this language to expand or provide a definition of youth or child. We don't have an age bracket in here, but it does speak to children and it does speak to youths. It doesn't speak to young adults. So that recommendation I didn't incorporate.
Okay, but we did get other recommendations, did we not, this morning from?
We didn't change it though, did we?
All right.
I didn't.
Yeah, Ken, we'll get to you here.
The only thing that we incorporated, which I had beforehand, was the annual contracting. I had annual in there, but I took it out because in the interest of, I ran it by my office actually, and they said that we don't want to do this annually, review these contracts every year. Why don't we do it multi-year? And that's a better approach. So that's what we're doing to reduce costs and just allow for a broader programming period.
No, I'm okay with that. That makes sense.
Okay.
I want to make
All right.
sure if it can't be explicitly in there, I went on the record that children's safety also includes prevention. And I want to make sure we have the opportunity as we move forward to make sure that those entities have an opportunity to apply for these dollars. Okay, so really for me, it isn't even necessarily the specific language. I just need to know if we're going to, we already are going to refer it. I just want it on the record one way or the other. I would prefer language, but you know, but if that's not going to happen, then I want it to show that that is my understanding of this levy as a commissioner. And it's our job to be broad and inclusive with how we work with trauma and children from 0 evidently to 23, because we're also working with kids that are going out of the foster system. So is the legislative record enough is my question.
Well, I think Stephen said that the measure itself says, what did it say, Stephen?
Well, the explanatory statement, commissioners, has parenting support, education and skill building, strengthening economic supports for families, violence prevention programming to reduce the incidence of violence in the community. Those are, in addition to the other components as well, but those are 3 areas of programs and services that I think could include a lot of the services that Commissioner Schrader is referencing.
So would it be better to just include a line in the top of the levy that it's includes prevention services as well, Stephen? Is there some place where we can do that where it's not just?
Mr. Chairman, could I offer a suggestion on language?
Yes,
Thank
so you're going to talk to the motion.
Yes.
Okay.
In what Mr. Madcore read to us, you could simply insert the words "and other preventative measures."
Sounds-
Period.
All right. I
And
can do
leave
that.
it at that. And the other thing is the coalition is fine with the age 18.
Is it 18 or over 18? They're okay.
18. They're okay with 18.
Because I did see information that they wanted to increase that number.
Well, they're okay with 18, and we're not putting an age in there anyway, so.
Correct.
Yeah. So
Can
Well,
I read this?
I'm just getting,
Just
I'm trying to get clarity because this is going so quickly, which was some of the angst we all had, quite frankly. And to get these last minute missives from a coalition is I don't know what's been included and not's been included. And I don't know who's been part of that conversation. I did see it this morning because Gary sent it to us.
All right,
Okay.
so Sonia, did you want to speak to the motion, or is the motion still there?
Yeah, I want to say just a few things. So Martha, thank you for all of your thoughts and concern, and focusing on ACEs is really important in the literature and the research. So I really appreciate those sentiments. I do want to compliment Stephen on the drafting of this because it says for as far as the service go, including but not limited to, which means that as issues arise for the committee to advise us, that it's inclusive. It doesn't exclude the type of services, Martha, that you're talking about if they are directly related to children impacted by violence, abuse, and neglect. And so as I was looking, let me finish. As I was looking at this, I think as along with what Ken was saying about other preventative measures, it might be good, Stephen, in the explanatory statement, is this levy will provide services for Clackamas County youth who have been, instead of experienced, say impacted, because that is a little bit broader and it could include the future tense.
Okay, that's
well.
what I'm trying to
That would
get
be
at.
my suggestion to get to Commissioner Schrader's.
I kind of like what Ken had to say, actually, quite
Yeah, I
frankly.
did. I like that too. Good job, Ken.
well,
Because-
it gives the oversight and granting board some ability to make a judgment call on the most effective application of the funds.
That is the language that I would prefer to be added. But again, when you say children are impacted by trauma, some of the work we have to do is the early work so we prevent
Right.
maximum. That's what I'm trying to get at here. And I'm concerned that we have to broaden the organizations that are in there at the early start and at those critical periods of child development to do preventative work, not just treat the child after they've been totally traumatized, after they've been sexually abused, after their mother's been beaten by their father, and the child's traumatized and things like that. There are things that can do early on that actually help us get to it earlier and sooner. And that's the point I'm trying to make. So
Yeah,
can
I just respond to that, Martha, real quick, while I still it's my turn. So Multnomah County, as Stephen said, is going out for a universal preschool measure. It's going to cost a lot of money. I don't think that's something that our Clackamas County voters would approve. We know that we are a fiscally conservative county, but the opportunity here with this is because we will be doing outcome measures and auditing and all that fiscal management and really looking at our results. We can then, after 5 years, we can use this 5 years to build the case for something broader, and that could include more universal. I agree with you. Universal preschool, universal childcare, absolutely important, but it's not, we have to take steps to create the future that
so that's what
realistic.
Telling me is that we are going to be narrowing this to only after children are traumatized, correct? And that's what I'm getting at. I don't see if we're going to do it, why we just don't do the full meal deal. I didn't mention universal childcare, but yes, I think that's part of what we need to be doing. Absolutely.
Sure, well, we need to build the Sunrise too, but they're not going to give us the money to do it. So we have to go take steps. I mean, we could argue this forever. It should be $1.15.
I have to be honest with you, but people have been working on this for 10 years. And so that's why I'm puzzled. 10 years. So, and if it still isn't recognizing that piece of the continuum, I'm very concerned. So I would like to have Ken's language added just so we have some legislative intent that this is possible for us to do.
What was that, Stephen?
And other preventative measures.
Okay.
Let's add it. So,
All
and
right.
we have the record of this discussion of what I'm really trying to get at. That's going to be very important to me.
So
Okay.
let me just say that legislative intent is great. It sometimes has an impact. I think that those wording does allow investment in preventative efforts, but I think that, Paul, you know, when you look at North Clackamas Parks thing and certain members of the community hold it up, they read the explanatory statement. They don't go back you may go back and look at the newspaper and see what they said, because I remember that being it. But in general, it's the measure itself and the explanation that people look to. And I think that Ken's words do address that. Now, Paul has had his hand up for a while, and I see his fingers are starting to twitch.
Point of order. Do we need to take a vote on this?
Well, somebody hasn't called for the vote, so Paul still has his hand up to discuss the amendment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want anyone to call for a motion, and I haven't even had a chance to be recognized yet on this. So, you know, hey, it's really clear. We all truly care about children. I mean, it's clear, and I think that as painful as this is, it just demonstrates that we all do really care. And you know, on one hand, I want to say that there's a bright line between children that are abused and children that are not, but it's really not that bright. And let's just say that children that are abused are 10% of the child population, and 90% are not, that child care for 90% is just far out of touch financially, and this measure is not going to do that. However, in reality, in the real world experience, there are families and households that begin or approach a stressful or domestic violence situation, and the kids are not yet impacted, right? They're not yet victims, but they're about to be subject to. And I thought that the language, as I read it yesterday and learning from all of this, and you know, I have learned quite a bit in the last 7 days or so, that the language is inclusive of that and does offer those cares in there. And adding language to be more expressive about it is fine. Ken's language would work just dandy, but I believe it's there. It's embedded in there. and is intended, not only just embedded, but is intended. So I'm, for that reason, and I read some of those lines yesterday that basically cover that. And so I'm good with that. And I now I understand that more clearly that Martha's prevention piece is probably for those children that are about to enter a dangerous situation. And I think there are the resources to tackle that. And that, again, that's the, I'm repeating myself. So I'm not sure, as far as Martha's motion, if simply the amendment can just be boiled down to the verbiage that Ken suggested, and maybe just withdraw the motion and we'll just agree to add the language. I'm asking Martha for that, if we understand what your point is. I think you have got it on the record right now, a lot of your concerns. But I think that would capture it.
Well, are we okay? Are we okay basically adding the language of prevention? We don't need to have a vote, but it will happen.
Well, we're going to make amendments today, and so that can be one of the amendments we're going to make. Small amendments. And I did want to say one other thing. Yes, I did get that email this morning. I had not had a chance to act or respond any of it. By the time I actually got at my office and sat at my desk, it was 10 minutes before the hearing started. So I did read it, but I wasn't able to act on it. And as I understand it, that since then, as Jim's explained or Sonia's explained, we're fine with leaving the language that it is, so it doesn't talk about kids that are over 18 years of age. So I think all those things are covered.
Well, that's my concern when I see something like this happening so quickly, because we don't have time to look at it, digest it. And I know we're going to do this. I actually would like to put this to a vote, quite frankly. So
what is it you want to put to a vote?
Amended is to include Ken's language. Ken, help me out. Okay, in the document.
It's already included. Stephen, you added it already, right?
So we don't need a vote on it?
Stephen, your mic's off.
Sorry. It sounds like there's uniform agreement that the term other preventative measures will be included in the explanatory statement. Are we good with that?
Thumbs up.
I'm
Yep.
good with that.
Go with it. Thank you.
Okay.
My
So,
motion.
so I'm going to go to Ken, then I want to say something. So I don't have the ability to raise my hand.
Yeah, I wanted to get that one out of the way before we backed up to something that we started out at the beginning. We have told many of our other departments to fully recover all costs. And now we're starting a new program and we have an issue with what the administrative costs will be. So I think the idea of billing those individual costs is the better approach. I don't think this program should be treated any differently than any other program. We capture the administrative costs.
So Martha's motion, nobody said
So,
withdraw.
putting in a cap, if it doesn't
Mary, we hear you.
Is going to be added.
Mary, we hear you.
If we put a cap in there and it doesn't capture the administrative costs, so we are not only in effect subsidizing it that way, we also are already subsidizing it by $100,000 in lost income as a result of compression. So it just seems to me and it's also a bookkeeping way to actually keep very direct records of what those costs are, whether they're staffing costs, whether they are auditing costs, or support costs for the committee that will be doing the granting. So that's my suggestion on the cost issue, and don't put the 7% or 5% or 10%.
You're
Again, treating it,
remove that sentence.
yeah, just treating it like every other division that we have demanded recover costs. That's my thought on it. I wouldn't mind hearing from Gary about it.
Well,
I'm not bringing it on him.
so go ahead, Gary, and then Paul.
You did, board, you approved a full cost recovery policy that was also agreed by the county budget committee. You did that earlier this year, which directs staff for any program that has a fee or fine that it's full cost recovery. So you have done that as an organization. I would probably recommend you strike the language altogether about any sort of a cap in this language. And then that's something we can work on after the fact. That would be an option for you.
All right, Paul?
Okay, I'm gonna ask that we start listing these and we knock them down one by one. But however, point of order, there's still a motion and a second. And if Martha's okay with us adding that language to the list.
I
and
think,
we'll-
yeah, Paul, I
Okay.
think we should make it clear that we just vote on it. I would really like to hear that. I want
Okay, then what you're gonna have to do, Martha, I think, is withdraw your motion and then make a motion to add
Right.
that language, because your motion wasn't to make that language whole.
Okay.
The motion was
Withdraw-
to withdraw.
motion. I'll withdraw my motion and I'll make another motion to accept Ken's language.
And I
Second.
withdraw my second, and I will second your motion.
All right, thank you.
All right. Any further discussion on what's already written in there? Stephen, what's the wording again?
Other preventative measures.
All right. Any further discussion? Please poll us. I guess Brenda or
No,
Mary?
I will.
Oh, Mary.
I will. Sorry about that, guys. Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Humberston,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
All right,
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
and Chair Bernard.
Aye. All right.
and all I ask is that we just knock these down one at a time and thumbs up, and then vote on them as a package.
So so the next one would be a motion to withdraw that one, to remove that one sentence. Wouldn't that be it, Ken? That's what you're suggesting?
With withdrawing the sentence regarding the cap.
Yeah.
And substitute language, and I'll defer to Mr. Madcore and Mr. Schmidt on how we would, bill for services rendered, or however you want to put it in there.
Or we just withdraw the sentence and leave it empty.
Oh,
To
yeah.
do that.
I think it's smarter to not complicate it, just to withdraw the sentence, if that's the will of the board.
Is that a second, Paul?
Yes.
All right, now we can have discussion. Do you guys want to have discussion or just vote on it?
I'm good to go. I just think it's consistent with the policies that we are passing and requiring of all of our other departments.
All right, so let's go to a vote.
Okay.
Mary?
Commissioner Fisher,
So I'll just do what everyone else wants to do.
okay. Commissioner Humberston,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Bernard.
Aye. And now we need to ask Sonia.
Yeah, so my concern is politically, it was polled at 5%, 7% is what Gary says we can do. A cap is gonna make it stronger. I have a little bit of angst of not speaking to it. We need to make sure it's not the county benefiting at the expense of children. I think we need trust in government and accountability. So those are my only thoughts, but I will absolutely defer to the will of the group. And if everybody feels that removing it is the way to go, then you can count my vote as an aye. But if you want to reconsider that, I would think we could leave it blank until next Thursday if we have our staff time to really look at it and give us some good advice. That would be my suggestion.
Would that work, Gary, with you, if you had a week?
Yes?
Okay, let's do that. So right
Yeah,
now,
if Gary can come up with an actual number that we know is full cost recovery, and it's less than 10% as an example, then I'd have no problem including it. I just want to make sure that we cover our costs because again, we're already $100,000 in subsidy in as a result of compression.
So that's
Yeah.
not necessarily true, Ken. Clackamas County may not experience compression. It depends on, like a fire district is more likely to, the sheriff would. It affects levies, right,
Yeah.
Paul? Isn't it levies?
Yeah.
And we're not a levy. The taxes for Clackamas County are not levied, but it could affect some of our, like the fire district, anyone that has a levy.
Okay.
So Paul,
Yeah, I just got to remember what I was going to say. That's what it was. So, Ken, I just want to just make one small little comment. It won't, what Gary brings back next week won't be actual. It'll be just a better estimate.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe we can decide then how we tackle it. But what I did want to say, in order to, and this is really a question for staff, I don't have the answer, but if the grants were rotated so that, that every year there was a cycle where you did a few or a couple, and then next year you did a couple, so you spread it out, would the cost be less because you're not doing all of the grants all at once? And it seems like having some consistency in rotating the grants and the awardees and the services would be less impactful than maybe 1 year where you see a substantial change if there's different awardees. So it seems like for a multitude of reasons, there might be a lot of logic. And in this case here, financial, if that cost is spread out and the work is spread out, and every year there's a small portion of the work program. That's my question to staff suggestion, in order to bring those admin costs down and keep the admin cost better averaged over the 5-year period, so there's not a spike 1 year and a lower number the next.
I think that would save money. Let's take an example, Camp Hope. Let's say that Clackamas Women's Services puts in for a grant application for 5 years of Camp Hope. I mean, and they know how much that is approximately every year, and that's their grant. And then you've got, lots more out there who would apply. That could be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 1 year. It could be, I guess this wouldn't pay for, do we have anything in here that wouldn't pay for personnel? I don't know. But anyway, so those would reduce costs, but those are some considerations for you, Gary, that when you come back with our estimate, that maybe you might suggest some cost saving measures to process this. It's okay, Gary?
Yes, look, there's a cost regardless how you stagger this. I mean, it's collecting the funds, it's legally making sure that they're meeting legal requirements, whether the grant is annual, every 2 years, every 3 years. There is being responsive to the recipient of the grant to do annual reports, quarterly reports. There's constant questions through the year. So my suggestion, although I'll give you this research, is it doesn't matter how you stagger it, there's an impact to staff, but I will get that for you by your meeting next Thursday.
Yeah, and the only thing I want to add is this is a 5-year levy, so you can't pass a 7-year grant, for example, and you actually, if you want to have a rotation and you intend to rotate and through the years, and you want to think about maybe, I don't know, again, a staff decision, but or suggestion I'd like to hear back from next week, but that could be 2-year levy or a 3-year levy, and there's still opportunity to do some rotation during that 5-year period. I did want to just ask one thing, the language that we talked about and getting consistency with the about the board members not being the recipients of the grantees. We did agree to make that change.
Can I speak to that, Mr. Chairman?
Let's have Stephen first, and then you can.
Okay.
what I have on the explanatory statement, it said that the committee will be advisory to the Board of County Commissioners and will be comprised of members representing a cross-section of Clackamas County and members that work with Clackamas youths. Paul had recommended that we strike and members that work with Clackamas youths. And I have no problem with that. It gives you greater flexibility on who you appoint anyway.
That's okay. If that's the amendment and there's agreement, I'm happy.
Any
Okay.
objection to that?
I just want to make sure, I'm trying not to get too distracted, but there's no recipients on the committee, is that correct?
That's the goal.
Okay, great.
Well, that would, yeah, I guess the measure itself, since the board is appointing those, if you have somebody who's going to be applying for a grant, you just don't appoint them.
Yeah, I mean, the intent, I believe that Commissioner Savas has put forward is that nobody affiliated with a program that might be a recipient of the grant can be on the board.
Correct.
Period. That's the intent. I don't know how, Stephen can construct the language, however is appropriate, but that's the intent.
Yeah, well, his suggestion of striking those few words there at the end of that sentence, I think suffices.
Okay.
Yeah, I think leave yourself some wiggle room. You don't want to lock it in with too much specificity at this point. You never know. One of you might be on the board of Parrot Creek as a commissioner even. I don't know. Let's say Parrot Creek applies. That would preclude you from serving. I say just keep it general. You guys, the future boards, appoint the members.
Okay.
All right, what else? We're good?
We did agree to add the language about audits. That was agreed upon by the board. That was suggested.
You have that in there?
I am including the word audit in the ballot measure itself after progress reports. Yes, we have room for that, so I can do that. It's
Okay.
already in the explanatory statement.
All right, thank you. And the last thing I have is just clarity, and I don't know where it is in the language, but in the explanatory statement or the ballot measure or both, and that is that the performance measures or the outcomes performance measures are set by the grant itself, how it's written, right? The grant application. I mean, or is that part of the county's measurements and outcomes? It would seem that ultimately the Board of County Commissioners approves maybe the grant language, but I'm just kind of getting to the specificity of what outcomes and whose are they, who owns them, and who's got to meet those. And it seems like it's a little fuzzy as I read it.
It probably should be fuzzy, Commissioner, because what I anticipate will happen if this passes, the county will create a set of bylaws for the Children's Services Committee on how to operate. The board will appoint members. There will be a grant application process. Here's the application. In your application, you will tell us what your metrics are, how you're going to track this, how you're going to report it to the committee, how you're going to be responsive, how you're going to provide documents and cooperate in the event of an audit, performance, financial, or otherwise. So that's going to be part of the application packet, and the successful grantee will have demonstrated to the committee and to the board that it can meet and abide by those particular metrics. So there's going to be a lot of granular detail that's going to be on the back end of all this.
Okay.
Again, another cost to the county because we'd have to create all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm satisfied with the changes.
So let's hear a motion to move this to the floor for consideration as amended. That's my motion.
Okay,
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to move this to next Thursday business meeting as amended. Any further discussion?
Nope.
One thing, were we not going to sit and chat about Gary's information, financial information? He's going to come back in a week as far as any adjustments, or are we going to forego that?
Well, we can amend it next Thursday and add that, or, so for now, we're just moving it to Thursday and we can make that amendment Thursday.
Okay.
Okay? All right, Mary, let's poll us.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Humberston,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
and Chair Bernard.
Aye. Great. We'll see you on next Thursday's business meeting.
Sounds good. I'll get it filed with
Stephen.
Mary shortly.
Stephen, thank you for your good work.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And Gary, of course.
Yeah, I think we got to just applaud staff for all the hard work they've done in the last 48 hours. So, you know, your work's appreciated. I know that you were, you know, just kind of went the extra mile on this, so it's noticed and appreciated.
I told you we could get it done.
All right, so thank you, and some of you will see in strategy.
Okay.
All right,
Bye.
thanks.